Hello everybody, today I want to discuss one of the few tribes in Polytopia that I think falls completely flat in their execution, and that is of course Imo. The tribe starts the game with the rather odd technology of meditation, which comes after climbing on the tech tree but precedes philosophy. The tech itself is really nothing to write home about. It gives you access to the pacifist task, which allows you to build a monument on turn 5, provided you've made no attacks up to this point, and allows you to sink 20 stars into a mountain temple if you really feel like making the game harder than it already is for yourself. To complement this, Imo have varied and inconsistent resource spawn rates. Now, hearing all of this, you might come to the conclusion that Imo are something of a mid to lower tier tribe with no real strength from the subcut par economy in the early to middle game. And that's because they are. Okay, so perhaps I've come off a little overcritical of Imo in the beginning of this video. So rather than spending the whole video complaining, let's try to find a strategy to make this mountain tribe actually usable at all. Now normally I would spend this portion of the video telling you to start the game by chopping down all of your trees with the Free Spirit Rush, and then leave it at that for the opening section, thanks to my YouTube commenters who informed me about this opening. However, we are now living in the aftermath of the Diplomacy Update beta releasing, and under the assumption that the alpha will be much the same as the beta minus bugs, I will not recommend you this strategy, because for the unaware, the new update reduced the income from chopping trees to just 1 star per tree. This opening may yet prove to be viable, but only in niche spawns with large numbers of trees. For this reason, I think it would be irresponsible to tell you to rely on this opening alone. We need an alternative opening then. The one I personally enjoy the most is what I like to call the old classic opening of researching an economic tech on turn 0, and then leveling up the capital quickly. However, another opening that is perhaps even more optimal on maps with space to expand is what I refer to as the 2 warriors opening, immediately building a second warrior, and using them to explore and delaying an economic tech until turn 1. On testing, I found both of these strategies to yield around 4,000 points, assuming a decent spawn by turn 10 if no other tribes interfere. This is definitely an approximation, simply because spawns are random, and in the first test I had the bright idea of chopping trees down and then building a road network longer than the Trans-Siberian Railway. However, using one of these openings should be enough to get you through the opening with minimal problems and into the middle game. The middle game, as far as I'm concerned, is a difficult balancing act. I'm going to assume that you are watching this at around the time of the release of the Diplomacy update, meaning that you will very likely be wanting to research diplomacy for the sake of using the new unit and diplomacy options. However, with the possible exception of the cloak, which I believe will be strong based on my initial impressions, I will disregard both strategy and diplomacy until the later game, simply because peace treaties will do nothing to appease a competent player if they think they can invade you and gain something from it. And this series tends to be PvP oriented, as bots tend to be far easier to exploit and demand less precise strategy compared to a good human player, so human players are a better jumping off point for talking about strategy. Players also have the urge to rush philosophy as IMO, simply because it's easy to do so, and while I concede that reduced tech prices are handy as any tribe, this strategy is both economically subpar, yielding perhaps 3,500 points by turn 10 on a good day, and also leaves you a sitting duck in the early game, because of how patently useless mindbenders are against just about any player with 2 brain cells to rub together. You'll not get away with this opening against expansionists on a small map, let alone Illyrion, and if you do take advantage of philosophy's reduced tech costs, I suggest you do it around turn 10 to 15, before you make a commitment to a middle game strategy. As for these military middle game strategies themselves, I see 3 obvious paths to go down. The first is your generic night rush, chopping unneeded trees to facilitate researching chivalry faster. This is now weaker thanks to the forest nerf that I think is here to stay, but made indefinitely stronger by the recent prevalence of cloaks, who spawn in a chain of weak warrior-like units when they attack a city. These are easy to eliminate with just 1 knight, and the knight will be left intact afterwards to boot. The knight's recent health nerf isn't really a big deal here, simply because they were already glass cannons, and weren't really designed to take damage in the first place. The strategy has always been viable and probably will always be until the end, but there's no specific reason to recommend it on IMO over any other tribe. By contrast, swordsmen are also pretty decent units that can be used to form a surprisingly tough army, and the fact that IMO have so many mountains that can be mined from makes this route seem pretty natural to go for. Additionally, the necessity of researching climbing to get swordsmen means you will inevitably end up with better movement and exploration potential within your more mountainous terrain. If you do go this route, I suggest it would be beneficial to have access to riders for flanking, exploring and cycling attacks through choke points. We'll have to wait to see if my predicted cloak nerf comes into effect here though, since otherwise we might have trouble dealing with those cloaks. Finally, you have the typical naval strategy. Again, this has nothing much to recommend itself to IMO specifically, but as they always say, you can't really argue with a battleship. Use it if you want, I don't really have much else to say about the matter. Now the last thing to address, as always, is tribe matchups. Tribes that tend to make mincemeat of you as IMO early on are Illyrian and any T0 tribes who are able to push you around simply by having a superior economy and military most of the time. It's worth saying that at least one person is going to argue that your mountain defense bonus will help you defend as IMO, but my response is that predictably, researching climbing will be the final nail in your economy's coffin, since it does not help your economy in any meaningful way. Later on, of course, you will have to deal with Kiku and other naval tribes that will be able to wipe out your armies with battleships and a better economy by far, and Polaris, who are probably the single latest endgame threat to any tribe provided they survive long enough. However, the single greatest predator of IMO is Cementi, who will make your life very difficult with Kitons and be able to get positive value trades on most of your units and above all mindbenders with boosted hexapods. So then, overall, IMO are a mid to low tier but usable tribe. They have some of the most enduring design in the whole game, so to see them on such a permanent state of mediocrity is a bit sad. In the end, I think the only thing that might shake them up a bit is an overhaul to Mindbenders, which isn't really likely to happen anytime soon. But we can always hope, and until then, good luck to any IMO mains who might even still exist out there. Goodbye.